Detective Ray Morrison had seen plenty of evidence bags in his 15 years with the Philadelphia Police Department, but finding one buried in the demolished remains of the old Whitman Hotel struck. The construction crew had been clearing the basement when their excavator hit something that wasn't concrete or dirt. "What you got there?" Morrison asked the foreman, wiping sweat from his brow in the August heat. "Found it under about 3 feet of rubble. Looks like someone hit it real good back in the day." Morrison examined the deteriorated plastic bag. Inside, miraculously preserved by the cool basement conditions, sat an old Polaroid camera and several developed photographs. The first photo made him stop cold. It showed a black woman, mid-30s, wearing a hotel cleaning uniform. She appeared to be unconscious or worse, lying on what looked like the same basement floor where they now stood. The second photo was worse. Much worse. Morrison immediately called his sergeant. "I need the crime scene unit at the Whitman Hotel demolition site. We've got what looks like evidence from an old case." Within 2 hours, the entire basement was cordoned off. Detective Lisa Chen, the department's cold case specialist, arrived with her team. "The Whitman Hotel," Chen mused, pulling up records on her laptop. "This place has history. Opened in 1962, closed in 1998. Let me run this through missing persons from that era." Morrison watched as Chen's expression changed while scrolling through files. "Got something?" she announced. Denise Washington, 34 years old, reported missing on March 15, 1995. Worked as a cleaning supervisor at the Whitman Hotel. Last seen leaving work on March 14th around 11 p.m. after finishing her shift. "That's our woman," Morrison confirmed, comparing the photo to the missing person file. "Same face, same uniform." Chen continued reading. "Says here the investigation was handled by Detective Frank Castellanos. Case went cold after 6 months. No leads, no witnesses, no body." "Where's Castellanos now?" "Retired in 2003. Lives in South Jersey. But here's the interesting part. He's now a security consultant. Guess who his biggest client was from 1995 to 2000? Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Whitman Hotel Corporation. Specifically, their head of security was a guy named Vincent Palmer. Palmer was the last person to see Denise Washington alive according to the original report." Morrison studied the photographs again. Beyond the disturbing images of Denise, there were shots of what appeared to be a hotel room, a maintenance area, and several faces he didn't recognize. One photo showed a man in a suit standing over Denise's body. The image was grainy but clear enough to make out distinct facial features. "We need to track down Denise's family. Someone needs to know. We might finally have answers." Chen nodded. "Her daughter Keisha would be about 25 now. Last address was North Philadelphia." "And Morrison?" "Yeah? Look at this." She held up another photograph from the bag. "That's not just evidence of murder. Look at the background, the setup, the multiple angles. Someone was documenting this systematically." Morrison felt his stomach turn. The photos suggested this wasn't a crime of passion or a robbery gone wrong. This was calculated, methodical, the kind of thing that usually meant there were other victims. "Get me everything on Vincent Palmer and Detective Castellanos. And Chen? Let's keep this quiet until we know what we're dealing with. If these photos are what I think they are, we're looking at something much bigger than one missing woman." As the crime scene team photographed each piece of evidence, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just opened a door that someone had spent 10 years making sure stayed closed. Family connections. Keisha Washington lived in a narrow row house on North 15th Street, the same neighborhood where she'd grown up with her grandmother after her mother vanished. At 25, she worked 2 jobs, morning shift at a hospital cafeteria and evenings at a dry cleaner, barely making ends meet while caring for her 6-year-old son Marcus. Detective Chen knocked on the door at 3 p.m., knowing Keisha would be home between her jobs. "Keisha Washington? I'm Detective Chen, Philadelphia Police. I'd like to speak with you about your mother, Denise Washington." Keisha's face hardened. "My mother's been gone 10 years. You people gave up looking for her after 6 months. We may have found new evidence. May I come in?" Asiante, inside the small living room, Chen explained about the discovery at the Whitman Hotel without revealing the graphic nature of the photographs. "You found pictures of her?" Keisha sat forward on the worn couch. What kind of pictures? Evidence that suggests your mother didn't simply disappear. We believe she was murdered. Keisha was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I always knew something happened to her. Mama wouldn't just leave me with Grandmama and disappear. She wasn't like that. Tell me about her job at the Whitman Hotel. Did she ever mention anyone there who made her uncomfortable? Any problems with management or guests? She liked her work mostly. Been there almost 3 years when she disappeared. But there was this one man, Vincent Palmer. He was head of security. Mama said he was always watching the black girls real close, finding excuses to be around when they were working alone. Chen made notes. Did she ever file a complaint? Mama tried talking to the manager once, woman named Patricia Kozlowski. But Mrs. Kozlowski said Mr. Palmer was just doing his job, making sure the cleaning staff followed procedures. What about Detective Castellanos? Do you remember him from the original investigation? Keisha's expression darkened. That man barely tried. Came to the house twice, asked the same questions both times. Acted like Mama was just another missing black woman who probably ran off with some man. When I kept calling the station, he stopped returning my calls. Chen showed Keisha a recent photo of Vincent Palmer from the Hotel Corporation's website. Is this the man your mother was concerned about? That's him. Older now, but that's definitely Vincent Palmer. Your mother ever mention anyone else at the hotel? Other staff members? Regular guests? There was this one cleaning lady, Rosa Mendez. She and Mama were close. Rosa might know something, but she disappeared too. Chen looked up sharply. Rosa Mendez disappeared. When? About 6 months after Mama. Just stopped showing up for work. I went looking for her, but her family said she'd gone back to El Salvador. Never made sense to me. Rosa had 3 kids in school here. Did you report Rosa's disappearance? Keisha gave a bitter laugh. You think the police cared about another missing woman who cleaned hotel rooms? They barely cared about my mother. Chen spent another hour with Keisha, building a timeline of Denise's last weeks. According to Keisha, her mother had seemed increasingly nervous about work in the days before she vanished. She started asking me to walk her to the bus stop when she worked late shifts. Said she felt like someone was watching her. The night she disappeared, she called me around 10:30. Said she was finishing up and would be home by midnight. That was the last time I heard her voice. After leaving Keisha's house, Chen drove directly to the records department. She pulled the missing person file on Rosa Mendez. Sure enough, reported missing in September 1995 by her sister Carmen. The investigating officer was the same Detective Castellanos. The file was thin. Rosa Mendez, 28, mother of 3, worked cleaning at the Whitman Hotel. Last seen leaving work September 22, 1995. Family claimed she was planning to bring her children to see family in El Salvador for Christmas, but would never have left permanently without her children. Case closed after 3 weeks when the family received a letter allegedly from Rosa, saying she'd decided to stay in El Salvador. Chen examined copies of the letter in the file. The handwriting looked forced, unnatural. More importantly, the postmark was from Camden, New Jersey, not El Salvador. 2 hotel cleaning women. Both disappeared within 6 months of each other. Both cases handled by the same detective who showed minimal interest in investigating. Both women had expressed concerns about Vincent Palmer. Chen picked up her phone and called Morrison. We need to find Rosa Mendez's family, and we need to track down every woman who worked cleaning at the Whitman Hotel between 1994 and 1996. You think there are more? I'm starting to think Denise Washington and those photos are just the beginning. The investigation deepens. Carmen Mendez still lived in the same apartment in North Philadelphia where she'd raised her sister Rosa's 3 children after Rosa vanished. Now 38, she worked as a nurse's aide and had never stopped wondering what really happened to her sister. Detective Chen found her just finishing her shift at Temple University Hospital. Rosa never would have abandoned Miguel, Sophia, and little Anna. Carmen insisted as they sat in her car outside the hospital. Those children were her whole life. When that letter came saying she was staying in El Salvador, I knew someone else wrote it. Did you keep the letter? Of course. Carmen reached into her purse and pulled out a worn envelope. I've been carrying this for 10 years, waiting for someone to finally listen. Chen examined the letter carefully. The handwriting was definitely forced, as if someone was trying to disguise their natural writing style. More telling were the word choices. Rosa had been in America for 12 years and spoke English fluently, but the letter contained awkward phrasings that suggested someone unfamiliar with how Rosa actually spoke. Tell me about Rosa's job at the Whitman Hotel. She hated it there toward the end. Said there were men who made the cleaning women uncomfortable. One in particular, Vincent Palmer. Rosa said he would follow them around, especially the younger women who worked alone on the upper floors. Did she ever mention Denise Washington? Carmen nodded vigorously. Rosa liked Denise. They would take breaks together sometimes. After Denise disappeared, Rosa became very frightened. She said she was going to quit, find work somewhere else. But she didn't quit. She tried, put in her 2 weeks' notice in early September. But then that Palmer man convinced her to stay, offered her more money, better hours. Rosa needed the money for the children, so she agreed to work just a few more weeks. Chen felt a chill. Vincent Palmer had convinced Rosa to stay just long enough for her to disappear too. Carmen, I need to ask you something important. Did Rosa ever mention taking photographs at work, or finding anything unusual? Photographs? No, but… Carmen paused, thinking. There was something. About a week before she disappeared, Rosa came home very upset. She said she'd seen something at the hotel she wasn't supposed to see. But when I asked what, she just said it was better if I didn't know. From the hospital, Chen drove to the Whitman Hotel Corporation's current headquarters in Center City. The company had evolved from hotel management into commercial real estate development after closing the original hotel in 1998. The receptionist directed her to the office of Patricia Kozlowski, now Regional Director of Operations. Detective Chen? I wasn't expecting police. Patricia was a stern-looking woman in her 50s, wearing an expensive suit that suggested she'd done well for herself since 1995. I'm investigating the disappearance of Denise Washington, who worked at your Whitman Hotel in 1995. Patricia's expression became guarded. That was a very long time ago. I'm not sure I can help you. You were the hotel manager then. You knew both Denise Washington and Rosa Mendez. Rosa Mendez? I barely remember. She was one of the cleaning staff who quit, I think. Went back to her family in Central America. She didn't quit, Mrs. Kozlowski. She was reported missing. Just like Denise Washington. Patricia stood up, moving behind her desk. Detective, I managed a hotel with over 200 employees. I can't be expected to remember every person who worked there briefly. What about Vincent Palmer? Do you remember him? Now Patricia's face went completely pale. Vincent Palmer was head of security. Very professional, very thorough. He left the company in 1998 when we closed the hotel. Do you know where he is now? No. We lost touch after the hotel closed. Chen noticed Patricia's hands were trembling slightly. Mrs. Kozlowski, did you ever receive complaints about Vincent Palmer from female employees? Absolutely not. Vincent ran a tight ship. Never had any complaints about his conduct. But Chen could see the lie in Patricia's eyes. She left her card and headed back to the station, making notes about Patricia's nervous behavior. Back at headquarters, Chen found Morrison at his desk, surrounded by files. Good timing, he said. I've been digging into Vincent Palmer. Turns out our Mr. Palmer has an interesting employment history. After the Whitman Hotel closed, he worked security at 3 other hotels in the area between 1998 and 2005. Let me guess, they all had missing employees. 2 of them, yes. Atlantic City, 1999. Maria Santos, hotel housekeeper, never seen again. And Cherry Hill, 2003. Jennifer Adams, night cleaning supervisor, vanished without a trace. Chen sat down hard in her chair. This isn't a coincidence. We're looking at a serial killer. Gets worse. Palmer currently works as head of security for a chain of budget motels in South Jersey. Guess who owns those motels? Tell me it's not Patricia Kozlowski. Morrison slid a business registration across the desk. Kozlowski Property Management. Patricia Kozlowski, President and CEO. Chen stared at the document. She's been employing Vincent Palmer for 10 years while lying about losing touch with him. And Chen? I pulled the employment records for the Whitman Hotel. Between 1993 and 1998, they had 17 women in their cleaning department quit without notice or be reported missing. 17. The scope of what they were uncovering began to sink in. This wasn't just about Denise Washington or even Rosa Mendez. They were looking at potentially dozens of victims spanning over a decade. "We need to find Vincent Palmer," Chen said. "Tonight." Connections revealed. Vincent Palmer lived in a modest ranch house in Pennsauken, New Jersey, about 20 minutes from Philadelphia. Detective Chen and Morrison conducted surveillance from 6 p.m. until Palmer's security shift ended at midnight. Palmer was a large man, still imposing at 58, with graying hair and the confident walk of someone accustomed to authority. He drove a black pickup truck and appeared to live alone. "We can't just knock on his door," Morrison said as Palmer pulled into his driveway. "Not yet. We need more than photographs and suspicious circumstances." "Then we get more," Chen replied. "Tomorrow I'm visiting the other hotels where he worked." The next morning, Chen drove to Atlantic City to investigate the case of Maria Santos. The Boardwalk Inn where Maria had worked was now under different management, but Chen tracked down the former assistant manager, David Kumar. "Maria Santos, yes, I remember her," Kumar said, as they sat in his current office at a casino hotel. "Good worker, very reliable. Then one day she just didn't show up. Her family said they never heard from her again." "What about Vincent Palmer?" Kumar's expression changed. "Palmer, there was something off about that man. The way he watched the female employees, especially the housekeeping staff. Several women complained to me informally, but never wanted to make official reports." "Why not?" "They were afraid. Most of our cleaning staff were immigrants, some undocumented. Palmer made it clear he had connections with immigration enforcement. The women felt they had no choice but to tolerate his behavior." "Did Maria Santos ever complain about Palmer?" "Not directly to me, but her friend Carmen, another housekeeper, mentioned that Maria was considering quitting. She was scared of Palmer. Carmen said Maria had seen Palmer do something terrible, but Maria never told her what it was." Chen felt the familiar pattern emerging. "Do you know how to reach Carmen?" "Carmen Torres. She still lives in Atlantic City, but she moved back to Mexico about 5 years ago. Her daughter might have contact information." From Atlantic City, Chen drove to Cherry Hill to investigate Jennifer Adams' disappearance in 2003. The hotel was now a different chain, but Chen located the former night manager, Robert Ellis, who remembered both Jennifer and Vincent Palmer clearly. "Jennifer was my best supervisor," Ellis explained over coffee near the hotel. "Never missed work. Great with training new employees. When she didn't show up for her shift, I knew something was wrong." "Tell me about Vincent Palmer." Ellis shook his head. "That man gave me the creeps, always showing up during night shifts when it was mostly women working. He'd walk the floors, supposedly checking security, but he spent too much time in the housekeeping areas." "Did Jennifer ever mention problems with Palmer?" "She did, actually. About a week before she disappeared, Jennifer asked me about the procedure for filing a formal complaint against security staff. When I asked why, she said Palmer had been following her, showing up in areas where he had no business being during her shifts." "Did she file the complaint?" "She was going to. I gave her the forms on Friday. She disappeared the following Tuesday." Ellis provided Chen with copies of employment records and incident reports from Jennifer's final weeks. One report, filed by Jennifer herself, documented Palmer being in unauthorized areas during night shifts. Back in Philadelphia, Chen met Morrison at the station. He'd spent the day tracking down former Whitman Hotel employees. "I found 3 more women," Morrison announced grimly. "Cleaning staff who worked at the Whitman between 1993 and 1998. All reported concerns about Vincent Palmer to other employees. All quit abruptly or disappeared." He spread out 3 missing person files on his desk. Sarah Mitchell, 1994. Reported missing by her roommate after she failed to come home from work. Case went cold. Angela Rodriguez, 1996. Last seen leaving the Whitman Hotel after her shift. Her car was found abandoned 3 days later. Tracy Johnson, 1997. Told her sister she was going to report Vincent Palmer for sexual harassment. Disappeared 2 days later. Chen stared at the files. 6 women from one hotel in 5 years. This isn't opportunistic crime. Palmer was systematically targeting victims. And Patricia Kozlowski knew, Morrison added. I pulled the hotel's internal records. Between 1994 and 1998, Patricia received at least 8 formal complaints about Vincent Palmer's behavior toward female employees. What happened to those complaints? Filed away and ignored, every one of them. And here's the kicker. Patricia gave Palmer outstanding performance reviews every year and approved 2 salary increases during the same period. Chen felt anger building in her chest. Patricia Kozlowski hadn't just ignored the complaints, she'd actively protected Vincent Palmer while he preyed on vulnerable women. We need to bring Patricia in for questioning, Chen said. She's not just a witness, she's an accessory. Morrison nodded. But first let's pay another visit to Vincent Palmer. I want to see how he reacts when we mention some of these names. Carefully, Chen cautioned. If he suspects we're onto him, he might run, or eliminate evidence we haven't found yet. You think there's more evidence? Chen thought about the systematic nature of the photographs they'd found, the careful documentation of Denise Washington's murder. Morrison, someone who photographs their crimes doesn't just do it once. Palmer's been at this for years. Somewhere, he has trophies from all of them. Escalation of tension. Detective Chen and Morrison decided to approach Vincent Palmer at his workplace rather than his home, hoping to catch him off guard during a routine day. Palmer worked security for Budget Suites, a chain of extended-stay motels in South Jersey managed by Patricia Kozlowski's company. They arrived at 2 p.m. at the Pennsauken location, where Palmer was scheduled for the day shift. The motel was typical of the chain. 2 stories, exterior corridors, catering to construction workers and people transitioning between housing. Palmer was in the small security office behind the front desk when Chen knocked. Vincent Palmer, I'm Detective Chen, Philadelphia Police. This is Detective Morrison. We'd like to ask you some questions about your employment at the Whitman Hotel. Palmer's reaction was subtle but telling. His shoulders tensed slightly and he took a moment too long to respond. The Whitman Hotel? That place closed years ago. What's this about? We're investigating the disappearance of some former employees. Denise Washington, Rosa Mendez. Do you remember them? I worked with a lot of people at the Whitman. Hard to remember everyone after 10 years. Morrison stepped forward. These weren't just employees, Mr. Palmer. They were both reported missing while working at the hotel. Both were last seen during shifts when you were on duty. Palmer's expression hardened. Are you accusing me of something, Detective? Just trying to get information. Maybe you could help us understand what happened to these women. I ran security at a busy hotel. My job was to monitor the property, not track every employee's personal life. People quit without notice all the time in that business. Chen noticed Palmer's hands clenching slightly as he spoke. What about Maria Santos in Atlantic City? Jennifer Adams in Cherry Hill? You worked security at those hotels too when they disappeared. Now Palmer's demeanor changed completely. The cooperative facade dropped, replaced by barely contained hostility. I think this conversation is over. You want to ask me more questions? You can do it through my lawyer. We're not arresting you, Mr. Palmer, just trying to understand the pattern. Palmer stood up, using his considerable size to intimidate. Pattern? The only pattern I see is 2 detectives trying to pin unsolved cases on a retired security guard. I've worked in hospitality security for 25 years. I've seen hundreds of employees come and go. Some people just disappear. That's not my fault or my responsibility. Morrison remained calm. Interesting choice of words. Most people would say they quit or moved away. You said they disappear. Palmer realized his mistake immediately. I meant they leave without giving notice. Look, I've got work to do. Unless you're arresting me, this conversation is finished. Chen left her card on Palmer's desk. If you remember anything about Denise Washington or Rosa Mendez, please call me. As they walked to their car, Morrison shook his head. He's guilty as hell, but he's not stupid. We pushed too hard. Maybe, but now we know he's aware we're investigating. Let's see how he reacts. That evening, Chen decided to stake out Palmer's house. She positioned herself across the street at 8 p.m., just as Palmer was arriving home from work. Instead of his usual routine, Palmer spent only 15 minutes inside before coming back out, carrying a large duffel bag and a metal toolbox. He loaded both into his pickup truck and drove away. Chen followed at a distance as Palmer drove to a storage facility in Camden. Using night vision binoculars, she watched Palmer open Unit 247 and move items from his truck inside. The process took over an hour. When Palmer finally left, Chen waited another 30 minutes before approaching the storage facility. The units were secured by individual padlocks, but she could see through security lighting that Unit 247 was larger than most, big enough to hold furniture or significant amounts of material. Back at the station the next morning, Chen briefed Morrison on Palmer's late-night activity. "He's moving evidence," Morrison concluded. "Question is, to where? Or destroying it? We need a warrant for that storage unit." "Based on what? Suspicious behavior isn't enough for a judge." Chen knew Morrison was right. They needed more concrete evidence to get a search warrant. "What about Patricia Kozlowski? Palmer's nervous behavior yesterday might make her more willing to talk." They found Patricia at her office, but she was no longer the cooperative businesswoman from their previous meeting. She had a lawyer present, an expensive-looking man in his 60s who introduced himself as Harold Steinberg. "My client has nothing more to say about events from 1995, Steinberg announced before Patricia could speak. "Ms. Kozlowski managed a large hotel with hundreds of employees. She can't be expected to remember specific details about individual workers from 10 years ago." "Even when those workers were murdered?" Chen asked bluntly. Patricia's face went white, but Steinberg remained calm. "That's a serious accusation, Detective. Do you have evidence that anyone was murdered?" Chen decided to bluff. "We have photographic evidence of Denise Washington's death, and we have reason to believe Vincent Palmer was responsible." Patricia started to speak, but Steinberg cut her off with a sharp look. "If you have evidence of a crime, charge someone. Otherwise, this meeting is over." As they left the office, Morrison was frustrated. "They're both lawyered up now. This is going to get much harder." Chen's phone rang. The caller ID showed Vincent Palmer's number. "Detective Chen? This is Vincent Palmer. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. Maybe we should talk again. But not at my work." "When and where?" "Tonight, 9 p.m. The parking lot behind the old Whitman Hotel. Come alone." The line went dead. Morrison looked at Chen with alarm. "You're not seriously considering meeting him there alone?" "Of course not. But Palmer's getting desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Or they eliminate witnesses. Crucial revelations." Despite Morrison's concerns, Chen decided to keep the meeting with Vincent Palmer, but with backup positioned around the Whitman Hotel demolition site. The area was dark and isolated at night, perfect for someone planning violence, or for someone planning to confess. Palmer's black pickup truck was already in the parking lot when Chen arrived at 9 p.m. She could see his silhouette in the driver's seat, waiting. Chen parked 20 feet away, positioning her car for a quick exit if necessary. Morrison and 2 uniformed officers were stationed in concealed positions around the lot. Palmer got out of his truck and walked toward Chen's car. She rolled down her window but remained in the vehicle. "You came?" Palmer said. "I wasn't sure you would." "What did you want to tell me, Mr. Palmer?" Palmer looked around the empty lot, then back at the demolished hotel. "This place holds a lot of memories." "Bad memories?" "That depends on your perspective." Palmer's voice was eerily calm. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. About patterns." Chen felt her pulse quicken. Palmer seemed different. Not hostile like yesterday, but strangely resigned. "I want to show you something," Palmer continued. "But not here. Too many people might be watching." "Mr. Palmer, if you have information about Denise Washington or the other missing women, you can tell me right here." Palmer shook his head. "What I have to show you isn't something I can just describe. It's evidence. Physical evidence." "What kind of evidence?" Palmer looked directly at Chen through her car window. "The kind that proves you're right about everything." Chen felt a chill. "Are you confessing to something, Mr. Palmer?" "I'm offering to show you the truth. But it has to be tonight. And it has to be somewhere private. Too many people know you're investigating now." "Where?" Palmer gave her an address in Camden, near the industrial waterfront. "There's a warehouse there. I have a key." Meet me there in 1 hour. And detective? Yes? Come alone, or you'll never see what happened to those women. Palmer walked back to his truck and drove away, leaving Chen sitting in the empty parking lot. Morrison appeared at her window within minutes. Did you get that? Every word. He's offering to show us evidence, but only if I meet him alone at a warehouse in Camden. Absolutely not. It's a trap, Chen thought for a moment. Maybe. Or maybe he's finally ready to talk. Palmer's getting old, Morrison. He's been carrying this for years. Sometimes killers want to confess, and sometimes they want to eliminate the detective who's getting too close. An hour later, Chen found herself outside the Camden warehouse, despite Morrison's objections. She wasn't actually alone. Morrison and a tactical team were positioned around the building, but Palmer would think she'd come by herself. The warehouse was an old brick building in an industrial district that had seen better days. Palmer's truck was parked outside, and a side door was propped open. Chen drew her weapon and entered carefully. The interior was mostly empty except for some old equipment and storage containers near the back wall. Palmer was standing next to one of the containers, his hands visible, no obvious weapons. You came, he said again. I respect that. Show me what you wanted me to see, Mr. Palmer. Palmer gestured toward the storage containers. 23 years I've been collecting memories. Every woman taught me something different. Chen's blood ran cold. Memories of what? Of their last moments. Some were defiant, like your Denise Washington. Others were pleading, like Rosa Mendez. Jennifer Adams tried to fight back. I respected that. Palmer moved toward one of the containers and produced a key from his pocket. Mr. Palmer, I need you to step away from the container and put your hands where I can see them. Detective, you wanted evidence. What I'm about to show you will solve not just Denise Washington's case, but 11 others you haven't even identified yet. Palmer unlocked the container and pulled the door open. Inside, Chen could see shelves lined with plastic bags, each containing what appeared to be personal items. Jewelry, identification cards, clothing, trophies, Palmer explained matter-of-factly, and photographs. Lots of photographs. I documented everything, just like the crime scene photos you found at the hotel. Chen kept her weapon trained on Palmer while speaking into her radio. Morrison, I need backup inside now. He's confessing. Palmer continued as if he hadn't heard her. Denise Washington was special. She figured out what I was doing before the others. Found my camera one night when she was cleaning the basement storage room. Smart woman. Is that why you killed her? I killed her because she threatened to expose me. But first, I had to know how much she'd seen, how much she'd figured out. The photos you found were from her interrogation. Morrison and the tactical team burst through the warehouse doors, weapons drawn. Palmer raised his hands slowly. I'm not armed, detective. I came here to confess. Chen approached the storage container while keeping her weapon ready. The contents were horrifying. Personal effects from what appeared to be dozens of victims, organized chronologically and labeled with dates and locations. Vincent Palmer, you're under arrest for the murder of Denise Washington and conspiracy in the deaths of multiple victims. As Morrison handcuffed Palmer, the older man continued talking. You'll never find all the bodies, detective. Some are in places you'd never think to look, but the evidence in those containers will tell you everything you need to know about each one. Chen began photographing the container contents. There were items from women they'd identified. Denise Washington's employee ID badge, Rosa Mendez's wedding ring, Jennifer Adams' watch, and dozens more from victims they didn't even know about yet. Mr. Palmer, where are the bodies? Palmer smiled coldly. That's for me to know, but I'll make you a deal, detective. Full confession, location of every victim, in exchange for life in prison instead of death penalty. Chen looked at the evidence surrounding her. Palmer had just handed them the biggest serial murder case in Philadelphia's history. That's not my decision to make, Mr. Palmer, but I guarantee you'll have plenty of time to think about it. As Palmer was loaded into the police vehicle, Chen continued documenting the warehouse contents. Whatever horrors Palmer had committed, they finally had evidence to ensure justice for Denise Washington and all the other women whose lives he'd stolen. Pursuit and flight. The arrest of Vincent Palmer at the Camden warehouse made headlines across the Philadelphia area, But Detective Chen knew the investigation was far from over. Palmer's confession had revealed the scope of his crimes, but Patricia Kozlowski remained free despite her obvious role in enabling and covering up Palmer's activities. Chen arrived at the station the next morning to find Morrison reviewing the evidence from Palmer's storage containers. "How many victims are we looking at?" she asked. "Preliminary count shows personal effects from 14 different women spanning from 1993 to 2004. The photographs are—" Morrison paused. "They're worse than the ones we found at the hotel. Palmer documented everything." Chen sat down heavily. "What about Palmer himself? Is he talking?" "That's the problem. His lawyer showed up this morning and shut down all communication. Palmer's not saying another word without a plea deal." Before Chen could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia Kozlowski's office number. "Detective Chen? This is Patricia Kozlowski. I need to speak with you immediately." "Ms. Kozlowski, you should contact us through your attorney." "That's just it. I fired Harold Steinberg this morning. I want to make a statement about Vincent Palmer and the Whitman Hotel." Chen exchanged glances with Morrison. "When and where?" "My office now." "And detective? Come alone. I have information that could help convict Palmer, but I won't share it if there are other officers present." Chen agreed to meet Patricia, but this time she insisted Morrison remain outside the building while wearing a wire to monitor the conversation. Patricia's office looked different than it had during their previous visits. Papers were scattered across her desk, and several boxes sat packed near the door. "Are you going somewhere, Miss Kozlowski?" Patricia looked exhausted, older than her 53 years. "I'm leaving Philadelphia, moving to Florida to be closer to my sister. After 20 years in hotel management, I think it's time for a change." "This seems rather sudden." Detective, I've spent 10 years trying to forget what happened at the Whitman Hotel. Now that Vincent Palmer has been arrested, I can't keep running from the truth." Chen sat down across from Patricia's desk. "What truth is that?" Patricia opened a file cabinet and withdrew a thick folder. "Vincent Palmer was sexually harassing and assaulting female employees from the day I hired him in 1993. By 1995, I had received formal complaints from 8 different women." "Why didn't you fire him?" Patricia's voice became barely a whisper. "Because Vincent Palmer had information about me that would have destroyed my career and my marriage." "What kind of information?" "Oh, I was embezzling money from the hotel's operating account. Nothing major, just skimming enough to cover my gambling debts. Palmer caught me altering the books in late 1993. Chen felt the pieces clicking into place. "So Palmer blackmailed you into protecting him." "It started small," Patricia continued. "Palmer would ask me to ignore complaints from the cleaning staff or to give him access to employee files. When women threatened to file formal reports, he'd have me transfer them to different shifts or find reasons to terminate them." Chen leaned forward. "What about when women started disappearing?" Patricia's hands began shaking. "I knew something was wrong when Denise Washington vanished. She'd been asking questions about Palmer, talking to other employees about filing group complaints. The night she disappeared, Palmer called me at home around midnight." "What did he say?" "He said the Denise problem had been resolved and that I shouldn't expect her to show up for work anymore. When I asked what he meant, he just laughed and hung up." Chen felt her anger rising. "You knew Palmer had killed Denise Washington and you said nothing?" "I suspected, but I had no proof, and Palmer made it clear that if I caused problems for him, he'd expose my embezzlement and destroy my life." "What about Rosa Mendez? The other women?" Patricia pulled more documents from the folder. "Every time a woman disappeared, Palmer would provide me with a resignation letter allegedly written by the victim. The handwriting was always different, but the content was similar. Family emergencies, moving out of state, better opportunities elsewhere." She handed Chen copies of the letters. "I kept them all. Even then I knew they were fake." Chen examined the documents. The handwriting varied, but the paper was all the same type, and several letters contained identical phrasings. "Ms. Kozlowski, you enabled a serial killer for over 5 years. Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done?" "I understand that I'm a coward who let innocent women die to protect my own secrets. But, Detective, I'm trying to make it right now." Patricia reached into her desk drawer and withdrew a small recorder. Vincent Palmer never knew I kept this. It's from a conversation we had in March 1995, 2 days after Denise Washington disappeared. She pressed play. Palmer's voice filled the office. Patricia, you're going to tell anyone who asks that Denise Washington quit without notice. If anyone from her family calls, you know nothing about her whereabouts. Patricia's voice on the recording. Vincent, what happened to her? Palmer. What happened is that she learned to mind her own business the hard way. Same thing that'll happen to anyone else who sticks their nose where it doesn't belong. Including you. Chen felt a chill listening to Palmer's casual admission of murder. Why are you giving this to me now? Chen asked. Because Palmer's lawyer is going to try to make a deal. He's going to claim Palmer acted alone, that no one else knew what he was doing. This recording proves I knew, which means the prosecutors can use it to show Palmer had help covering up his crimes. Patricia paused, looking out her office window. Detective, there's something else. Palmer didn't just kill hotel employees. What do you mean? In 1997, Palmer started dating a woman named Carol Fletcher. She was a bank teller, never worked at any of our properties. They dated for about 6 months. Then Carol disappeared. Chen made notes. Did you report this? Carol's disappearance was never connected to Palmer because they weren't public about their relationship. But Palmer told me Carol had been asking too many questions about his work schedule, wondering why he was at the hotel during off hours. Do you think there are other victims outside of hotel employees? Patricia nodded grimly. Palmer once told me that hotel work was just his hunting ground. Oh, he said he'd learned that transient women, maids, housekeepers, temporary workers, were the perfect targets because people expected them to disappear. Chen's phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. Problem. Palmer's lawyer just filed for immediate release on procedural grounds. Judge is reviewing now. Chen looked up at Patricia. I need you to come to the station right now and make an official statement. With that recording and your testimony, we can ensure Palmer never sees the outside of a prison cell. Patricia gathered her files. Detective, there's one more thing. Palmer kept detailed records of his activities. Not just photographs, but written logs. He used to brag about his collection and his system. We found extensive evidence in his storage containers. No, you don't understand. The storage unit in Camden was just his recent collection. Palmer has been doing this for over 20 years. There are other storage facilities, other hiding places. Patricia pulled out a business card from her wallet. Palmer gave me this card once. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should call this number and tell them to clean up his messes. Chen examined the card. It was for a private storage company in South Jersey, but the phone number handwritten on the back was different from the company's printed number. Ms. Kozlowski, you may have just saved lives. If Palmer has other storage locations with active evidence, we need to find them before his associates destroy everything. As they left Patricia's office, Chen called Morrison. We need warrants for every storage facility in South Jersey, and we need them now. Palmer's operation was much bigger than we thought. How much bigger? Patricia thinks he's been killing women for over 20 years, and he has help cleaning up evidence. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Chen, Palmer's lawyer is demanding his release based on illegal search and seizure. Claims we didn't have probable cause to search the warehouse. That's impossible. Palmer invited me there and confessed voluntarily. The lawyer is claiming Palmer was coerced and that his confession was obtained under duress. If the judge agrees, Palmer walks tonight. Chen felt panic rising. If Palmer was released, he would disappear forever, along with information about dozens of victims and their burial locations. We need to find those other storage locations before Palmer gets out. If he's released, he'll destroy everything and run. Already on it. I've got teams heading to every storage facility within 30 miles. But Chen, even if we find more evidence, it might not matter if Palmer's confession gets thrown out. Chen looked at Patricia, who was loading boxes into her car in obvious preparation to leave town quickly. Ms. Kozlowski, you're not going anywhere. Until Vincent Palmer is convicted, you're a material witness in multiple murder cases. Patricia stopped loading boxes and looked at Chen with resignation. Detective, you don't understand. Palmer didn't work alone. There are other people involved in this. People with money and influence. If Palmer gets released, I'll be dead within a week. Who else is involved? Howard Lee. I don't know all the names, but Palmer mentioned having partners in other cities. He said his operation was part of something much larger. Chen realized they weren't just dealing with a serial killer, but with an organized network of people involved in the systematic murder of vulnerable women. And they had less than 24 hours to prove it before Vincent Palmer walked free. Final confrontation. By 6 p.m. that evening, Detective Chen received the call she'd been dreading. Judge Harrison had ruled that Vincent Palmer's arrest was based on illegally obtained evidence, and Palmer was being released on his own recognizance pending a review of the charges. How is that possible? Chen demanded, as she stood outside the courthouse with Morrison. Palmer's lawyer argued that our search of the warehouse was conducted without a proper warrant, and that Palmer's confession was coerced through deception, Morrison explained. The judge agreed that we should have obtained warrants before entering the warehouse, regardless of Palmer's invitation. Chen watched in disbelief as Vincent Palmer walked down the courthouse steps a free man, accompanied by his lawyer and two men in expensive suits she didn't recognize. Who are those men with him? Morrison checked his notes. According to the court clerk, they're representatives from Palmer's union, the International Association of Security Professionals. Apparently, Palmer called them from jail this morning. Something about the situation felt wrong to Chen. Palmer had worked hotel security, not high-level corporate security that would warrant union representatives in expensive suits. Her phone rang. Patricia Kozlowski's voice was panicked. Detective Chen, Vincent Palmer just called me. He knows I've been talking to you. Where are you right now? At my office, packing the last of my files. Palmer said I have until midnight to leave Philadelphia permanently or face the consequences. Ms. Kozlowski, stay where you are. We're sending officers to protect you. You don't understand. Palmer has connections you don't know about. The police can't protect me from these people. The line went dead. Chen and Morrison raced to Patricia's office building, but they arrived to find Patricia's car gone and her office ransacked. Papers were scattered everywhere, file cabinets were overturned, and Patricia's computer had been destroyed. They got here fast, Morrison observed, examining the destruction. Chen noticed something glinting under Patricia's overturned desk, the small recorder Patricia had used to play Palmer's confession. She picked it up and found it was still intact. At least we still have the recording, she said. But we need to find Patricia before Palmer does. Morrison's phone rang. After a brief conversation, he turned to Chen with a grim expression. That was dispatch. They found Patricia Kozlowski's car abandoned at Philadelphia International Airport. Her purse and luggage were still inside. She never made it to her flight. Chen, there's something else. Airport security reviewed the parking lot footage. Patricia was approached by three men in dark SUVs. They forced her into one of the vehicles. Chen felt a growing sense of urgency. Palmer hadn't just killed individual victims. He was part of an organized network with the resources to kidnap witnesses and evade law enforcement. We need to find Palmer's other storage locations tonight. If Patricia was right about him having 20 years of evidence, that's our only chance to build a case strong enough to hold him. What ni? Over the next 6 hours, police teams searched 18 storage facilities across South Jersey and found nothing connected to Vincent Palmer. Either Patricia had been wrong about additional locations or Palmer's associates had already cleaned out the evidence. At 2 a.m., Chen's phone rang. The caller ID showed Patricia Kozlowski's number. Detective Chen? The voice was weak, frightened. Patricia, where are you? Are you hurt? I'm not sure where I am. Some kind of warehouse. Palmer is here, and two other men. They want me to sign a statement saying I made up everything I told you about Palmer. Chen immediately signaled Morrison to begin tracing the call while keeping Patricia on the line. Patricia, don't sign anything. We're going to find you. Detective, Palmer wants to talk to you. Palmer's voice came on the line. Detective Chen, you've caused me considerable inconvenience. Palmer, release Patricia Kozlowski. Whatever problems you have are with the police, not with her. Actually, my problems are with people who don't understand their place. Patricia forgot her place when she started talking to you. What do you want? I want you to stop investigating me. Destroy the evidence you found. Forget about Denise Washington and Rosa Mendez, and move on with your life. Chen could hear Patricia crying in the background. That's not going to happen, Palmer. You're going to face justice for what you've done. Palmer laughed coldly. Detective, you found evidence of 14 victims in my storage container. Do you want to know how many women I've actually killed? Chen felt her blood run cold. How many? 47. Over 23 years, in 6 different states. And I didn't work alone. The organization I represent has eliminated over 300 women who posed problems for our clients. What organization? AE, let's just say there are powerful men in business, politics, and law enforcement who occasionally need certain problems to disappear permanently. We provide that service. Chen realized they weren't dealing with a simple serial killer, but with a professional assassination network targeting women who threatened powerful individuals. Palmer, if you hurt Patricia Kozlowski, I will spend the rest of my career hunting down everyone connected to your organization. Actually, Detective, you won't, because you're going to disappear too. You should have minded your own business like Patricia should have. The line went dead. Morrison had managed to trace the call to an industrial area in Camden near the waterfront. Police units were already en route. 20 minutes later, Chen and Morrison arrived at an abandoned shipping warehouse surrounded by police vehicles. The tactical team had the building surrounded, but there was no sign of movement inside. Palmer's car is here, Morrison reported, pointing to the black pickup truck parked behind the warehouse. Chen approached the building carefully with the tactical team. The front entrance was unlocked, and they could hear voices from inside. Palmer's voice echoed through the warehouse. Detective Chen, I know you're out there. Come inside alone, or Patricia Kozlowski dies right now. Against Morrison's protests, Chen entered the warehouse with her weapon drawn. Palmer stood in the center of the empty space, holding Patricia at gunpoint. 2 other men flanked them, both armed. Drop your weapon, Detective. Chen kept her gun trained on Palmer. Release Patricia, and we can talk. The time for talking is over. You've seen too much, learned too much. This organization has been operating successfully for over 20 years because we eliminate problems before they become threats. Patricia looked at Chen with desperate eyes. Detective, Palmer killed Carol Fletcher because she found financial records showing payments from politicians and businessmen. Palmer wasn't just killing random victims. He was hired to eliminate specific women who had information that could damage powerful people. One of Palmer's associates moved toward Chen. Vincent, enough talking. Let's finish this. Palmer shook his head. I want Detective Chen to understand the scope of what she's stumbled into before she dies. This isn't just about hotel maids and housekeepers. We've eliminated senators' mistresses, journalists investigating corruption, witnesses in federal cases. Chen kept her weapon steady. Who's paying you, Palmer? Men who understand that sometimes democracy requires the permanent silencing of inconvenient voices. Men who believe that some secrets are worth killing to protect. You're talking about government officials? Palmer smiled coldly. I'm talking about the kind of men who could have your investigation shut down with a single phone call. The kind of men who could make you disappear without a trace. Suddenly, the warehouse lights cut out, plunging the space into darkness. Chen heard gunshots and shouting. Then emergency lighting flickered on. When her vision adjusted, Chen saw Palmer on the ground, wounded but alive. His 2 associates were also down. Patricia was crouched behind a shipping container, apparently unharmed. Morrison's voice called from the entrance. Clear. We got them all. As paramedics treated Palmer's wounds, he looked at Chen with defiance. You think you've won, Detective? This organization has been operating since the 1970s. Taking down one cell won't stop the others. Chen knelt beside Palmer as he was loaded onto a stretcher. Give me names, Palmer. Tell me who's been paying you to kill these women. Palmer coughed, blood speckling his lips. You'll never get names from me. But, Detective, watch your back. You've made enemies tonight who have long memories. As Palmer was loaded into the ambulance, Chen realized that arresting him was just the beginning. They'd uncovered evidence of a decades-long conspiracy involving the systematic assassination of women across multiple states, funded by powerful individuals who remained free and dangerous. The case of Denise Washington's disappearance had led them to something much larger and more terrifying than a simple serial killer. They'd discovered an organized network of professional killers operating with impunity, protected by corrupt officials and wealthy clients who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. Complete revelations. Vincent Palmer survived his wounds and was placed in maximum security at the Philadelphia County Jail, while prosecutors prepared charges. Despite his injuries, Palmer remained defiant and refused to provide information about his organization or the clients who had hired him over the years. Detective Chen spent the following weeks analyzing the evidence recovered from Palmer's storage containers and the abandoned warehouse where he'd held Patricia Kozlowski. What they found painted a picture of systematic murder spanning 3 decades. "The documentation is incredible," Chen told Morrison as they reviewed files in the conference room. Palmer kept detailed records of every assassination, including client names, payment amounts, and disposal methods. Morrison pointed to a ledger they'd recovered from Palmer's car. "Look at this. Payments ranging from $50,000 to $500,000 per victim. These weren't random killings. They were professional hits disguised as disappearances." The evidence showed that Palmer's organization, which called itself Resolution Services, had been operating since 1978. They specialized in eliminating women who posed threats to powerful men, whistleblowers, investigative journalists, political mistresses, witnesses in criminal cases, and corporate executives who discovered illegal activities. Chen traced her finger down a list of victims. 47 confirmed kills by Palmer alone. But look at this. There are records for 12 other operatives working in different regions. We're looking at potentially hundreds of murders nationwide. Any names of clients? Dozens. Politicians, judges, corporate executives, law enforcement officials. Palmer wasn't exaggerating when he said this went to the highest levels of government and business. Patricia Kozlowski, recovering from her kidnapping ordeal, provided additional testimony that helped prosecutors understand the scope of the conspiracy. She revealed that Palmer had boasted about eliminating women who threatened to expose corruption in multiple states. "Vincent told me once that Resolution Services had contracts with people who could make problems disappear at the federal level," Patricia testified from her hospital bed. "He said they had judges, prosecutors, and FBI agents on their payroll." Chen realized this explained why so many missing person cases involving women had gone unsolved over the years. Palmer's organization had been systematically eliminating victims and covering up their crimes with help from corrupt officials. The breakthrough came when forensic accountants traced the financial records found in Palmer's files. The payments to Resolution Services had been funneled through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts, but the paper trail eventually led to specific individuals. Senator Robert Hayes of Pennsylvania had paid $300,000 in 1994 to have his former campaign manager, Sarah Mitchell, eliminated after she threatened to expose illegal campaign contributions. Federal Judge Thomas Brennan had authorized $450,000 in 1997 to eliminate journalist Tracy Johnson, who was investigating judicial corruption in Philadelphia. Corporate executive William Ashford had paid $200,000 in 1999 to eliminate Maria Santos, an Atlantic City hotel worker who had witnessed him meeting with organized crime figures. The list went on. 15 high-profile individuals had used Resolution Services to eliminate women who threatened their careers, reputations, or freedom. "We have enough evidence to bring down half the Pennsylvania political establishment," Morrison observed as they reviewed the financial records. Chen nodded grimly. "The question is whether the system is corrupt enough that these people will escape justice even with overwhelming evidence." Their concerns proved justified. Within days of the evidence being compiled, Chen received orders from the police commissioner to limit their investigation to Vincent Palmer alone and avoid pursuing the broader conspiracy. "Why?" Chen demanded during a meeting with Commissioner Williams. "Because the Federal Bureau of Investigation is taking over all aspects of this case that involve federal officials," Williams replied. "Our jurisdiction is limited to local crimes." "Commissioner, we have evidence of a decades-long murder conspiracy involving judges, senators, and federal agents. This can't be buried. Williams looked uncomfortable. Detective Chen, I've received direct orders from the mayor's office. This case is being transferred to federal jurisdiction. Your involvement ends today. Chen realized that Palmer had been right. The organization's tentacles reached high enough into government that they could shut down investigations even after being exposed. That evening, Chen met secretly with Morrison and Patricia Kozlowski at a diner outside the city. They're going to cover this up, Chen told them. Palmer will be convicted for the local murders, but the federal conspiracy will disappear. Patricia shook her head. We can't let that happen. Too many women died for their secrets. Morrison leaned forward. What are you thinking? Chen had been considering their options. We leak everything to the media. Every document, every financial record, every piece of evidence. Make it impossible for them to cover up. That's career suicide, Morrison warned. They'll destroy us professionally. Maybe. But Denise Washington, Rosa Mendez, and 45 other women deserve justice. If the system won't provide it through official channels, we find another way. Patricia pulled out a flash drive from her purse. Before they ransacked my office, I copied every file Palmer ever gave me. Financial records, correspondence, even recordings of phone calls with clients. That's enough to bring down everyone involved, Chen realized. They spent the next 3 hours organizing the evidence for release to multiple news outlets simultaneously. By morning, every major newspaper and television station in the country would have access to the complete Resolution Services files. There's no going back from this, Morrison said as Chen prepared the final data package. Good, Chen replied. These women have been waiting 10, 20, 30 years for justice. It's time they got it. The next morning, headlines across the nation exposed the Resolution Services conspiracy. Decades-long assassination, network exposed, ran on the front page of the Washington Post. Politicians paid millions to eliminate women, led the New York Times coverage. Within hours, FBI agents arrested Senator Hayes at his Philadelphia office. Judge Brennan was taken into custody during a court session. Corporate executive Ashford was arrested at his company's headquarters. Chen watched the arrests from her desk, knowing her career with the Philadelphia Police Department was effectively over, but feeling satisfied that justice was finally being served. Commissioner Williams called Chen into his office that afternoon. Detective Chen, you've created a national incident. The FBI is furious. The mayor is receiving calls from Washington, and every news outlet in the country wants to interview you. Commissioner, we uncovered evidence of the systematic murder of dozens of women by a network that included federal officials. This needed to be exposed. Williams nodded slowly. I agree, which is why I'm recommending you for commendation rather than disciplinary action. What you've done took courage, and those women deserve justice. Chen was surprised by Williams' response, but relieved that she wouldn't face official punishment for exposing the conspiracy. Over the following months, the Resolution Services investigation expanded nationwide. Federal prosecutors in 12 states brought charges against clients who had hired the organization to eliminate women. Palmer's financial records led to the discovery of additional operatives and dozens more victims. Vincent Palmer himself was sentenced to life in prison without parole after pleading guilty to 47 counts of first-degree murder. In his final statement to the court, he showed no remorse. I provided a service to important people who needed problems solved, Palmer declared. If I hadn't done it, someone else would have. Judge Martinez, who had replaced the arrested Judge Brennan, responded, Mr. Palmer, you didn't solve problems. You created them by destroying families and communities. The 47 women you murdered were daughters, mothers, sisters, and friends whose lives had value beyond your ability to comprehend. Patricia Kozlowski received immunity from prosecution in exchange for her cooperation and testimony. She moved to Florida as planned and established a foundation providing support services for families of missing women. I can't bring back the women who died because of my cowardice, Patricia said in a television interview, but I can help ensure their families get the support and resources they need to heal. Resolution and justice. 2 years after the discovery of the camera and photographs in the demolished Whitman Hotel basement, Detective Lisa Chen stood in the Philadelphia Police Department's conference room, surrounded by representatives from families of the Resolution Services victims. Keisha Washington, now 27, held her 8-year-old son Marcus as Chen presented her with her mother's belongings, recovered from Vincent Palmer's storage containers. Your mother's badge, her wedding ring, and the necklace you described to us in 2005, Chen said, handing Keisha a small box. We also recovered her personal effects from the hotel locker that Palmer had been keeping as trophies. Keisha opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was her mother's employee ID badge from the Whitman Hotel, the simple gold wedding band she'd worn since marrying Keisha's father, and a silver cross necklace that had belonged to Keisha's grandmother. "Thank you," Keisha whispered, tears streaming down her face. "For 10 years, I wondered if I'd ever know what really happened to her. Now I can finally let her rest in peace." Carmen Torres, Rosa Mendez's sister, had flown in from Mexico with Rosa's 3 children, now adults themselves. "Miguel is 28 now, works as an engineer," Carmen told Chen. "Sophia graduated from nursing school last year. Ana just started college. They all succeeded despite losing their mother, but they never forgot her." Chen presented Carmen with Rosa's wedding ring and a small religious medal that Rosa had worn every day. "The evidence Palmer kept helped us prove that Rosa never abandoned her children," Chen explained. "She died trying to expose his crimes and protect other women." Over the past 2 years, the Resolution Services investigation had expanded to include law enforcement agencies in 32 states. The organization had been operating since 1978, eliminating an estimated 312 women who posed threats to wealthy and powerful clients. Vincent Palmer's detailed records had made it possible to identify most of the victims and locate many of their remains. Palmer had kept meticulous documentation of burial sites, disposal methods, and client communications. "We've recovered the remains of 41 victims," Chen announced to the assembled families. "Each woman will finally receive a proper burial with her family present." At time, the scope of Resolution Services' client base had shocked even experienced investigators. The organization's customers had included senators, federal judges, corporate executives, law enforcement officials, and organized crime figures across multiple states. Senator Robert Hayes received a life sentence for ordering the murder of his former campaign manager. Federal Judge Thomas Brennan was sentenced to death for authorizing the elimination of journalist Tracy Johnson. Corporate executive William Ashford received life without parole for the murder of Maria Santos. In total, 37 clients were convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and sentenced to lengthy prison terms. The investigation had effectively dismantled one of the most successful assassination networks in American history. Detective Ray Morrison, now promoted to sergeant, had worked alongside Chen throughout the expanded investigation. "The most important thing we accomplished was proving that these women mattered," Morrison reflected. "For decades, their disappearances were treated as routine missing person cases. Now their families know they died trying to do the right thing." Patricia Kozlowski attended the ceremony via video link from her foundation's headquarters in Tampa. "I enabled Vincent Palmer's crimes for 5 years because I was afraid of losing my job and reputation," Patricia said. "Those women died because people like me chose silence over courage. I can't undo that, but I can spend the rest of my life helping other families find answers." Patricia's foundation had provided resources for investigating over 200 additional missing person cases involving women who had disappeared under suspicious circumstances. 12 of those cases had been linked to other assassination networks inspired by Resolution Services. Chen addressed the families gathered in the conference room. "Your mothers, daughters, and sisters were targeted because they had the courage to speak truth to power. They threatened to expose corruption, testified against powerful criminals, and refused to be silenced by intimidation. They died as heroes, even though the world didn't recognize it at the time." Keisha Washington stood to respond on behalf of all the families. "My mother Denise always taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's dangerous. She died living by those principles." "Detective Chen, you and your team honored her memory by refusing to give up when everyone else wanted to cover up the truth. The ceremony concluded with the unveiling of a memorial wall in the police headquarters lobby, listing the names of all 312 Resolution Services victims. Each name was engraved alongside the words, "Courage Remembered." Chen stood before the memorial after the families had departed, reading through the names of women whose lives had been stolen to protect the secrets of powerful men. Morrison joined her in front of the wall. "Think we got them all? Palmer's network, yes, but there are probably other organizations out there doing the same thing. The demand for these services didn't disappear just because we shut down Resolution Services. So we keep investigating." Chen nodded. "We keep investigating, and we keep fighting for women whose voices have been silenced." 6 months later, Chen received a letter from Miguel Mendez, Rosa's eldest son. "Detective Chen, I wanted you to know that I've been accepted to the FBI Academy. My goal is to join the unit that investigates organized crime and public corruption. My mother died trying to expose criminals, and I want to continue her work. Thank you for giving our family the truth about what happened to her, and for showing us that there are still police officers who fight for justice, no matter how powerful the criminals are." Chen kept the letter on her desk as a reminder of why the investigation had been worth the personal and professional costs. Denise Washington, Rosa Mendez, and 310 other women had died because they refused to be silenced by intimidation. Their courage had ultimately brought down one of the most powerful criminal organizations in American history. But more importantly, it had proven that no one, regardless of wealth, position, or influence, was above the law when determined investigators refused to give up. The camera and photographs found in that plastic bag in the Whitman Hotel basement had opened a door to justice that had been locked for nearly 30 years. Behind that door, 47 families found closure, 37 criminals faced punishment, and 312 women finally received the recognition they deserved as heroes who died fighting for truth. Detective Chen continued working cold cases involving missing women, knowing that somewhere in unsolved files and forgotten evidence, other victims were waiting for someone to care enough to seek justice on their behalf. The fight for truth never ends. It simply moves from one case to the next, carried forward by investigators who understand that every victim matters, and every family deserves answers, no matter how long it takes or how powerful the people who want the truth buried. In the end, Denise Washington's murder had been solved not just by police work, but by the courage of women like Keisha Washington and Patricia Kozlowski, who refused to let the truth die with the victims. Their persistence had proven that justice delayed is not justice denied. Sometimes it just takes longer for the truth to surface, but when it does, it can change everything.